Hey everybody, we're back. Versus live here for our third match. Sorry about the technical difficulties. We're going to be fighting through that. It's okay, Taylor. It's not your fault. We had 8,000 ping or whatever. It's not like you broke the internet. Anywho, so our third match that we're going to be playing today, I'm going to be running, oh God, John Johnson? Or is that his name?
I believe so.
I'm killing I've said his name multiple times this broadcast.
Top 8, right?
My brain is melting.
It was John Johnson then.
Yeah, John Johnson, Simc Nexus deck, and this was very similar to Ollie Antrazi's top 4 classic list from a week or two ago. And we actually, I think it's 2 weeks ago, because it was last week. We played it on Versus Live on Tuesday. That was the deck I chose to run through, the standard gauntlet. And I ended up actually losing 2 of the 3 matches, I believe, maybe even all 3, but they were close games, and the deck felt like it had legs, but I always felt like there was something missing. And whenever I was playing Teamer, having those shocks and lightning strikes and things like that to be able to interact with the early threats always felt like relatively important, on top of just not straight up losing to Thief of Sanity, which happened at least one time in our Esper matchup where we played the deck. Now, with that said, I watched John Johnson play quite a bit on camera this past weekend, quite a bit off camera as well, because he was in the feature match doing so well. He was our last 9-0 player. Even though he had a rough start to day 2 where he started off 0-3, he ended up rattling 3 in a row at the end to get into the elimination rounds and made his way all the way to top 4, where he lost to the eventual winner in Robert Wagner Krankle. So the Simc Nexus deck is the real deal. I think Root Snare is quite good, and it really shows that the deck doesn't need a White Splash for Teferi to really get the job done. 4 copies of Search for Escanta pair super well with Wilderness Reclamation and helping you dig for those Nexus of Fate, and the deck just feels very, very good.
Yeah, it's just a very streamlined deck that can go over the top, and once you have Root Snare, maybe that's all you need against these aggressive decks. I am playing a Bant mid-range deck built around Hero of Precinct 1. This is the 19th place finishing list, and I know his last name was McGuire, but I can't remember if it was John or Jason.
Jerry.
I can't help you on that one.
Just show me the money, Jerry. It's fine. So Mr. McGuire was playing this Bant mid-range deck focused around multicolor spells to really put an emphasis on Hero Precinct 1. We've actually seen this.
Justin McGuire.
Justin McGuire.
Okay,
it's fine.
I was wrong.
It started with a J.
Yeah.
I was closer. The Hero Precinct 1 decks where you build multicolor decks around them. We've seen it Esper style with Wyatt Darby. We have seen it in Rakdos Mardu style with Judith to give that a good
I saw
boost.
Aaron Barrich playing a Naya deck with Heroic Reinforcements and Gruul Spellbreaker in Hero Precinct 1, Flower Flourish. He was next to me in the Classic, so he also wasn't doing a lot of winning, but, the deck looked cool.
Sure.
And this version is Bant. You get to play a lot of the powerful Azorius token maker cards that we talked about a lot during preview season. We got multiple copies of Dovin, 4 copies of Depose Deploy, a card I like a lot because it's great with Frilled Mystic. They're both 4-mana instants. You can leave up on turn 4. If you need to counter something, you play your Frilled Mystic, get ahead that way. If they don't do anything, you cast Deploy, make a couple 1/1 flyers, a couple Nick Millers, gain a little bit of life, start putting them under some pressure, and then force them to play into that Frilled Mystic later on.
Yeah, and you start to feel like a Bant Flash deck where you start operating a lot at instant speed and punishing your opponent for playing around one card by hitting them with a different one. And I think that the Deploy versus Frilled Mystic is just like so cool, that little interaction.
So the deck very nicely blends a lot of the elements from Jonathan Hobbs' Flash deck from week 1 with some of the Wyatt Darby's elements playing around Hero, and the logic behind his Esper build, even if it's not really the same cards. We still have some of the Azorius cards, though. So we mesh those two together nicely. We have Growth Chamber Guardian, even though it's a single color card.
I hate that card so much.
And we have a couple more Conclave Tribunals as another single color card, but works really well with all the Thopter generation and is going to be good in this matchup, just taking care of Search for Escanta and Wilderness Reclamation. So this deck has plenty of tools in the matchup. We got main deck Spell Pierces and Frilled Mystics, sideboard negates and disdainful strokes. It's going to be about establishing a clock early with your Precinct 1 or Growth Chamber Guardian, maybe a dove in so that I can work towards the ultimate and reload, and then hold up counter spells and just try to end the game before you're able to wade through those counter spells. So sort of a classic aggro control versus combo or big mana kind of matchup, and I'm excited to see how it plays out.
All right, a few questions before we get started.
And we can revisit this one at the end as well. Do you think Nexus decks will eventually take over the format, or is it just overly represented in the meta this weekend as a response to Rise of Sultai Midrange?
Well, if decks like Mono Blue continue to be one of the more popular decks in the format, and specifically once you get to day 2 and the format condenses, you're going to see decks like Nexus of Fate really struggle because clock plus disruption is particularly tough for them to beat if it's the right kind of disruption. Now, with that said, Nexus of Fate was very highly represented in day 2 and in various iterations. We had multiple Gates decks that had Wilderness Reclamation plus Nexus of Fate. We had multiple Bant versions. We had versions like this 2 copies of the Simc version in the top 10 decks. I think another player got, or the top 12 decks. I know one other player was somewhere hovering in the top 16. And it just really had an emphasis on Wilderness Reclamation and the strength it brings to these instant speed decks. And when you combine it with Search for Skanta and Nexus of Fate, you just get a 3-card combo that is just disgusting and so hard to beat if you're not a dedicated aggro disruptive package.
Yeah, I do think the decks are really powerful. They're going to stick around, but the power of the sideboard cards that people have, the duresses, drill bits, negates, disdainful strokes, and everybody has 4, 5, 6, 7 copies of these kinds of cards alongside Crushing Canopy or other disenchant effects for Wilderness Reclamation and Search for Azcanta. I think it's just going to be kept in check. The issue is, are we okay having a format where everybody has to sideboard 1 million cards to keep these Reclamation decks in check because they're just that powerful? We sort of, because the card received so much hype during previous season, we never really got to the point where people hadn't reacted enough to it. It was always on everyone's radar, and it's never going to be off the radar, save for some very special circumstances. So as long as it's in the crosshairs and everyone comes prepared, I don't think the deck can get too good, but you never know. Like Aetherworks Marvel eventually did, and what Reclamation has certainly been compared to that card. So maybe somebody eventually finds the build. I think if they do, it'll be closer to the big Bant Flash deck that Jonathan Hobbs built after his week 1 second place finish, where you had this other game plan, and Reclamation, it wasn't linear, but Reclamation was a card that put your game plan into overdrive. And so if somebody finds that right collection of cards around it, sure, that deck could be really good. But as long as the deck's linear, the sideboard cards will keep them in check.
Like a Bant, I would love to see a Bant version of Nexus of Fate transition to Angel of Grace, Frilled Mystic, and Settle the Wreckage as their big sideboard transformational strategy, where game 1 they're reliant on Teferi, Nexus of Fate, Wilderness Reclamation, and Search for Azcanta, and just have this really sweet transformational sideboard that isn't super vulnerable to Spell Pierce outside of the card Wilderness Reclamation. The deck just operates at instant speed almost primarily, and really punishes people for kind of sitting back on things like Mortify that would try to kill Wilderness Reclamation, whereas Nexus of Fate costs 7 mana. It's kind of clunky. You need an engine going for it to really do much of anything. I think that we're kind of at the part where Nexus of Fate is Aetherworks Marvel when everyone was trying to turbo out an Emrakul or an Ulamog.
They're playing Glassblowers, Puzzle Knots, and a lot of weak energy enablers just to do that as often as possible. And we eventually moved to that Gruul-based list that was sort of energy, but also sort of Delirium. We had Ishkana, we had Traverse the Ulvenwald.
And then eventually we got to the hard 4-color version that played Sigarda, Host of Herons in the main deck for the mirror match, but also just as a huge top-end card that you could just normally cast, on top of Rogue Refiner, Whirler Virtuoso, and other mid-range cards. And we eventually found out that Rogue Refiner and Attune with Ether were the problems. And Aetherworks Marvel was pretty disgusting with the giant payoffs, and it was never a feel-good moment when your opponent got to spin the Aetherworks Marvel from, either they missed and the game ended on that side, or they hit and the game ended on the other side. So it just created these really weird games that were never really all that interesting or fun. And I think with Nexus of Fate, it's actually creating these games that are not really that interesting or fun, but for a completely different reason. And that one person takes all the time in the games, and we saw Clark and Ironworks basically get banned for exactly the same reason. They said one a little too much in the hands of the experienced pilots or whatever, but for the most part, Ironworks was not a huge part of any real modern metagame, and one or two people just kind of floated to the top every time because they were just so good with the deck, and the deck was very strong. But whenever I played against someone who was not super good with the deck, they would literally just take 15 minutes to combo, and I'd just sit here with nothing to do, and then sometimes I would not die, but I would still die on the next turn, because I'm not going to kill them Anyway, so it's neither here nor there. We're going to just go to the match now because we've been talking too much and y'all want to see some magic.
So fortunately, the games are interesting until we get to that point. So.
Right. No, that's fine. And I think in Aetherworks Marvel, it was very similar, where the games were fun on turns 1, 2, 3, sometimes 4 and 5. But once the Ironworks Scrap Trawler thing was assembled, you're literally just waiting to die. And that's never a good feeling in a game of Magic. No one ever wants to lose for 10 turns straight or 10 minutes straight. And I think that any card that encourages that or does that is something they've been trying to move away from. I lost again, so I'm going to be on the play here, and my hand's pretty good.
Ditto.
All right. Simc Gilgate, go.
Except I'm going to be on the draw. I will lead on a breeding pool.
Simc Gilgate, not quite as good as Breeding Pool.
Here it was the same card. I guess not exactly, because now my Glacial Fortress enters untapped. I have Hero of Precinct 1.
All right. I drew a Growth Spiral, so we're going to do that instead of casting Search for Sconto. We're going to go Growth Spiral into Memorial Genius, untap. Going to go Hinterland Harbor into Wilderness Reclamation, untap. And...
Gross.
Blink of an eye with Kicker on this thing.
What turn was that?
It's turn 3. And we're doing this to stifle his early development and buy us some time to get a lot of other things online. And hoping he doesn't have some sort of main deck disenchant for our Wilderness Reclamation.
I will play a Dovin.
Nice,
and
dude.
Make a Thopter token. Gain a life.
All right, you're at 21.
Please use the Nick Millers. I think he'd be very upset. Thank you.
Well, he is usually just an upset type of guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but he works to the bone.
That's true. All right. All right. Play this tapped in a turn trigger float. Just go ahead and pop this. Draw 2.
Yep.
And your turn.
Okay. So we made a token last turn so we could set up a double spell to kind of try to catch back up here. And so why don't I make another token, go to 22.
Yep.
Play a Hero of Precinct 1.
Yep.
Play a Conclave Tribunal.
That's not fair or good
Get this,
for me.
I think I want to get the Reclamation. I can beat the Azcanta finding some more stuff, but the other one's going to be harder. Play tapped Temple Garden, pass the turn.
Searcher's gone to trigger. We'll keep this one for now. I'm going to go ahead and Growth Spiral land and then land for turn and your turn.
Okay, no second Reclamation. That makes me happy. Now I feel pretty good about where this game is going. So we'll start plussing this Dovin and working towards an ultimate. Attack for 4.
I'm going to go for Frilled Mystic. Now, if he wants a Frilled Mystic back, that's
your Frilled Mystic's fine.
All right, I'm going to block here.
I'm fine with this trade.
Check.
You take 2, I get 2 counters on the Dovin.
Yep.
You're at 18. I will play a tapped Hallowed Fountain and pass the turn.
All right. Sconto. Graveyard. And this is 6. Land, go. Thinking. On your upkeep, I'm just going to cast Nexus of Fate.
Roll Mystic.
Yep. All right, so this is going to shuffle in. You may continue with your turn.
Plus the Dovin. Attack you for 2.
At 16.
16. Dovin goes to 7. Play a tapped Breeding Pool and pass the turn.
All right, cut.
What are your thoughts on Dovin, Ross?
It is a pretty good card, actually. It ramps to ultimate faster than I would have expected just from reading the card. And it just does good work against all form of deck. So
I'm gonna draw this and then I'm gonna cast it.
that's pretty good.
It's not good. Doesn't do anything. I couldn't put it in the graveyard and transform Escanta, so I didn't actually gain anything. And I couldn't put it in the graveyard because then there's a chance I just don't. Oh, then I just don't get to transform Escanta. And so I'm just basically, reset.
Would have been really nice for me to have a Spell Pierce there.
Yeah, I didn't even know your deck played Spell Pierce. So we'll transform this. And we're gonna try to hit Reclamation off of the plus and get our engine going. So draw for turn. Activate. Missed. I think I'll just take a Chemister's Insight.
Okay.
And so we're in a lot of trouble now. That Conclave Tribunal was particularly good. And we just don't have a whole lot else to do. I guess I'll just play a Chemister's while you're mostly tapped out.
Yep.
Your turn.
1 permanent shy for the City's Blessing.
Yep, I'm going to go ahead and get it ready, just in case.
Okay. I will ultimate this Dovin.
Okay.
Top 10. I get 3.
Ross, what are your top 10 cards?
What was that, Taylor?
Said, what are your top 10 cards?
Clickbait.
Let's see. We got
Dovin Ultimate.
We got a land, another land. Don't need those. Definitely going to take these 2. And definitely don't want these. So maybe we just want this one.
Can the hand cam see what he's looking at?
Yep.
Good.
Yeah. Not the best of hits there, but in game 1 we don't have a ton of great ones. Okay, let's attack for 5.
13, I think.
I had you at 16 before.
I probably missed an attack, so I'm at 11.
Yeah. 11, and let's play an island, play a Teferi.
Yikes.
Plus the Teferi.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't great. And untap 2 lands and pass the turn.
It's really funny. It's on turn 4 or 5 or whatever. When I popped my Immortal Genius, I could have just not done that and just held up Frilled Mystic, but I was like, what can he play on turn 4 that I'm really that scared of? Turned out,
Raggy.
Conclave Tribunal. That's not a bad one.
This is how we learn.
Get the City's Blessing. Alrighty, guys. Well, we actually had an insane draw here, and I think I'm actually just going to steal this game from Ross. So I'm going to play Wilderness Reclamation.
You're here, folks.
Results.
I will pass the turn to my instep.
And you can go to your end step.
All right, so trigger this. 3, 4, 5. So get the mana things out so we can make sure we don't mess this up. All right, so let's see, two green and 3 blue, and now I think I don't want to activate Escanta. I'm trying to figure out what he has for 4 mana here that really busts me up. So I think I'm just going to float a blue. Then I'll resolve this.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. I'll spend 7 and cast Nexus of Fate.
Resolves.
While Todd's shuffling up, Director Rob really wants to know, Ross, do you remember the name of the beer that was on the same tap as the Guinness at the bar in Dallas?
No.
There you go, Rob. Nope.
Okay.
You're going to have to call Malone's. It was good, though.
All right. Why am I tapping so much?
I don't know.
I'm one short of being able to activate Arch and Escanta, so we'll just activate Escanta. 3, 4. Taking Growth Spiral, I guess. Do I even want to cast Growth Spiral? I don't have a land, and he can just kill my Reclamation, so... All right, whatever. I'll move to untap step.
Yep.
I don't know what all's in Ross's deck, so I don't want to expose myself to things if I don't have to when I have Frilled Mystic in hand. So, draw for turn. For a good one. I don't think I want to cast it yet, though. Wish I just knew if Ross had a thing or not. He didn't counter my Reclamation or kill it or anything, so this is like me just trying to play this weird dance around all this stuff. Me trying to figure out if... Alright, so we're going to leave up this. I'm going to play a Hydrocressus Rex equals 4. Trigger.
You go to 13.
Okay, draw 2. Land for turn, move to end step.
Yep.
I put trigger Reclamation on the stack. I'm gonna
What's your life total, Todd? Sorry, I
activate
missed it.
Escanto.
Todd's at 13.
Thank you.
Activate Escanto.
Sure.
Taking Escanto. On top of all my lands.
Yep.
I will activate Escanto.
Yep.
Alright. I will pass the turn.
Hold on.
You had 4 mana.
Yeah, I had 4 mana tapped. You got 13.
Mm-hmm.
On your end step, I will depose the Crassus. Draw a card.
Okay.
Attack for 5.
I will go to
8.
8.
Hero of Precinct 1.
Sure.
Deputy of Detention, trigger the hero.
Try for a Frilled Mystic.
Results.
Okay.
Minus to Fairy on Reclamation.
Sure.
Pass the turn.
Alright, I'm trying real hard to play around Spell Pierce here, but I don't think I actually care if this gets countered, so I'm going to Growth Spiral.
Sure.
Okay. Play the land off of it. And I'm just going to untap. Draw for turn. Alright, so we can activate Skanta, cast it with 4 up. It's fine. Okay. Activate Skanta. 2, 3, 4. And take Reclamation. Cast it.
Yep.
Just attack to Fairy for 4. Attempt to move my end step.
Yep.
Alright, float 4. Use 3 of it to activate Escanta. Nexus. Cast Nexus with 4 up.
Yep.
Do you want to concede yet? Is this not enough? It's fine. I just feel like you would have stopped something if you had... Alright, whatever. I'll just keep playing. Alright, still during end step. I'm going to bounce your Conclave Tribunal and draw a card.
I'll Spell Pierce it.
Okay. Alright. Untap. Draw for turn. Memorial, activate Escanta. Reclamation. Yeah, I still have a Chemisters in the yard I forgot about. Play another one.
Yep.
A little different than like, oh, I had leftovers in the fridge I forgot about.
Yeah. All right, I'll cast the Chemisters.
Yep.
Draw 2, attack you for 7.
Block the Frilled Mystic.
All right, so you're at 18. Yep. What's happening? Oh, these were the 2 cards I drew off the Chemisters. I was very confused. All right, first trigger.
Okay, I'm dead.
Okay. This is what the deck does. I'm not trying to bore you to death. I'm sorry. I was trying to play really fast, but I was also trying to play around Spell Pierce, and it was not easy to do both.
Yeah. Just didn't hit a very good ultimate off that Dovin. Need to find another Frilled Mystic,
Right.
I think, to have a shot there. Said I found a Teferi Spell Pierce hero.
Mm-hmm. All right. We're going to take a short break here while we get sideboards put together for the second game. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're back here for sideboarding. Ross, you lost that game, so tell us how you're going to sideboard when you're on the play here.
Okay, so very obviously, we're going to be bringing in the 3 counter spells on the sideboard and bringing out the Warrant Wardens, because this card just doesn't interact well with what Todd is doing. From there, it's a little less obvious. I'm a fan of Dovin in this matchup as a card that you can cast cheaply while Todd is still setting up that has a powerful effect late in the game. The ultimate wasn't good enough there in game 1, but 10 cards, most of the time you're going to find what you need, and we have additional counter spells to find off of it. So I like this. I'm actually cutting Teferi, even though it has some good functionality in this matchup. You can cast it on 5 mana, untap 2 lands, hold up one of these negates or disdainful strokes, which is nice, and then start churning through more interaction with the card draw. The -3 can handle a Search for Azcanta or Wilderness Reclamation. So it's a card that is reasonable in the matchup, but I think here it's the worst option. We have plenty of ways to deal with enchantments in the deck between Deputy of Detention and Knight of Autumn, so we're not hurting for the -3 to do that. That -3 is also pretty weak if you transform Azcanta or have other card draw. If you have a Chemisters in the graveyard, you can immediately get back to the card, so it doesn't actually buy you a lot of time in most scenarios.
Sure.
And against a deck that probably has counterspells of its own in its sideboard and has Frilled Mystic in the main, tapping 5 mana with the hopes of getting to resolve it and untap 2 lands with the ability is occasionally wishful thinking. And it'll be a huge tempo swing if it ever gets countered. So the risk of it, I think, is too high. So I'm cutting Teferi.
All right, from my side of things, Root Snare is mostly for decks like Azor's Aggro that put a little too much pressure on you too quickly. I don't think Ross's deck does that, so I usually have time to get going. A lot of his pressure is also on the ground, so I want to try something a little bit different here, and I'm going to try to dominate the battlefield with Biogenic Ooze. I think if there's ever a spot where Ross taps out in a weird turn and I get to go Growth Spiral and untap Biogenic Ooze, there's a chance that single-handedly wins the game, and I want to just see if it's able to do that in this particular matchup. So I'm going to be cutting that for Root Snare. And then Satisfiers Volley, I think Depose Deploy plus Dovinbon could potentially overwhelm me with flyers if I'm relying on Biogenic Ooze. But Crushing Canopy is not the type of anti-flying card I want. So we're going to use Sagittarius Volley to do that. Oh, excuse me. Yeah.
So that's how we're sideboarding?
Yes.
Okay.
And then the Blink of an Eye is going to come out because I don't think it's that good in this matchup. A lot of your creatures are either cheap or don't really care if they get bounced. And, bouncing a Conclave Tribunal is not super good. But
Yeah, it can be if you're like ending the game that turn.
Right.
On like getting a Wilderness Reclamation back, but you don't need a bunch of them.
All right, couple questions.
Yeah, well, everyone's just talking about Wilderness Reclamation and Nexus and one person, but I have 4 golds. Todd Ross, Wilderness Reclamation is the problem, not Nexus. Being able to cast multiple spells per turn is how you get ahead in the game of Magic, and Wild Rec enables that on an absurd level. Change his mind.
Okay, so this deck existed before Wilderness Reclamation. It was a really good deck in the previous standards, multiple previous standard seasons with Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, as that engine and as a way to untap both Search for Azcanta as well as your lands. And on Magic Arena last season, Turbo Fog, just the Bant versions, before they even had Azorius lands and things like that, were still doing pretty well. For me, it's not about power level, and I want to be very clear with that. I don't think that this deck is too good. I think that the way that this deck wins is not okay, and I think that cards like Nexus of Fate that actually just break the rules of a normal game of Magic. Like they literally had it where if it hits the graveyard from anywhere, it shuffles back into the deck, which means that like you can never deck your opponent. So they have incentive to literally just draw. Either they can just win games by just like draw discarding. That's how they can win. That's a way they can win the game. And to me, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, you can never run them out of threats. You can never win the attrition war. You have to kill them.
Yeah, and in real life, this is also a thing where there are things in place that keep you from being able to cast Nexus of Fate infinity times. There is a thing that says if you cannot progress the game, you are generating an infinite loop that has no effect on the game. And so a judge will instruct you to stop the loop or progress the game. And if you can do neither of those things, you lose. But on Magic Arena specifically, there's nothing to stop somebody from literally casting Nexus of Fate hundreds of times in a row. We saw someone do it against Shahar Shinhar, and that person, he's not breaking the rules of Arena, but he's breaking a rule of Magic. And someone who doesn't play live Magic would have no idea that that's not okay, other than it just kind of feel bad and scummy or whatever. But like, and you can do things within the parameters of Magic Arena, and it functions normally, but it's still just like this weird thing that they very clearly put this in a box topper and didn't test it in a set. I'm positive that they showed this to a few people and were like, hey, what do you think of this card? The 7-mana instant speed time walk. How about that? And someone in play design or R&D was like, Torrential Gearhulk's in standard, right? You can't have that touch the graveyard, or you have to have it exile itself or something. They're like, well, okay, well, we'll make it shuffle in whenever. And then boom, there it is. Goes to print, box topper only. And like, to me, that's what it feels like would happen. I don't know if that's exactly what happened, but it feels like a tacked on thing at the end. And to me, that just feels, it's so weird. And it's such a format defining card that has not only just absurdly bad play patterns, but it is neither fun to play with or against. And it also just does this really weird thing where you just can break Arena. For me, there's literally no reason to have this card legal, where I think Wilderness Reclamation plus Search for Azcanta is fine. I think Wilderness Reclamation plus Expansion Explosion is fine. It's a 2-card combination that doesn't outright win the game. It generates an absurd advantage, and it puts the onus on the opponent to win the game quickly. The degenerate part comes when you get to take extra turns and do this over and over and over again, and you have no incentive to close the game. You can just prolong it virtually forever. And to me, that's just not okay.
Yeah, so when you say that the problem is Wilderness Reclamation, I think what you're saying is that that's the more powerful of the cards, and we agree. I think Wilderness Reclamation is a more powerful card than Nexus of Fate. The issue that we have with it is that Nexus of Fate encourages bad gameplay that is not entertaining and not fun, and is not gameplay that R&D and play design wants to encourage, especially in a standard format.
I don't even think it's play that they intended to happen. Yeah. And that's what really bothers me with the card. So, and in real life, also, it's only foil, and half the time you have to have a judge proxy it because it's warped. And you just see on camera someone just goes 7 mana, play a swamp. Like what?
That aspect of it is just comical.
Yeah, everything about the card Nexus of Fate to me just screams, please ban me. Anyway, what's your hand looking like?
Not great.
All right, mine's not great either. Let's play some Magic though, man. I'm
Could you
tired
put
of
your arm
talking.
down? I can't see the.
I'm tired of talking.
Not great. I think this is going to be a mulligan. The old 5-lander.
All right, let's get some easier questions where we won't go off on a 5-er.
I will try.
I wouldn't blame the questions for that, Todd.
All right.
Just going to put that one out there.
Okay.
Sorry. There's a lot of chant for marbles.
I've already lost the marbles.
Yeah,
I've literally already lost. He's up 2 matches to 0. They're
right behind me. They're staying there.
They're
All right, so there's nothing that's not about Nexus right now.
Okay.
So
y'all are really hung up on this Nexus of Fate card.
Hey Ross, I don't play the basketballmans, but how's the basketball world?
Basketball's fine. Jazz won this weekend. They're playing Golden State tonight. That should be a fun game.
Anything weird happen with the trade deadline?
Yeah.
Nope.
Cool.
Not for the Jazz, at least. Well, Marcus All went to Toronto, and
try your hand. Stop shuffling. You shuffle too much.
Tobias Harris went to Philadelphia, and That's pretty cool.
The great Kyle West is angry that Charlotte did nothing. Is this something?
Yeah, Charlotte's trying to keep their star player, Kemba Walker, and the fact that they're doing nothing means that he's probably going to leave. And so then Kyle's going to have no one to watch drag the team to 35 wins and ninth place every year. Instead, they'll actually just be terrible.
All right, bad question. All right, moving on.
No, that was a great question.
That was a good question.
I got to dunk on Kyle West. I count that as a win.
Yeah.
This 6 is fine. We're going to need to get some help here, but we have one part of the equation, and it's the most important one to have in our opening hand.
What?
Don't need another one of those.
Hero Precinct 1?
Not exactly, but...
Your turn.
We have a Growth Chamber Guardian.
Yep. 2 drops are important here because then they allow them to basically not have to hold up mana or not have to tap out for the rest of the game. Both of his 2 drops allow him to do that, which is pretty nice.
Let's play a Dovin.
Yeah, results.
And, think I'm just gonna plus.
Okay.
Attack for 2, you're at 18. I want to get this thing to ultimate as quickly as I can.
Sure.
Pass. Okay, no Growth Spiral is great there. I think that's one of my least favorite parts of playing against this deck, is that you never know when they have the acceleration until it's too late. And I would play completely differently all the time if I just knew.
Yeah.
So I actually really am annoyed by Growth Spiral.
It is weird that it's an instant. I mean, it's very similar to just the card Explore, and I personally would just rather have something that's a little more simplistic and Explore than Growth Spiral that's just an instant for some weird reason.
Yeah, because it's 2 colors, they have to upgrade it a bit.
All right, 16.
Yeah, get a 7th counter on that. Shock
what's
myself
life total?
to 18.
I'm sorry, couldn't catch up.
Todd's at 16, I'm at 18.
Okay.
Pass the turn.
Also, Kyle West is messaged me and said dagger.
Adapt.
Sure. I'm in a lot of trouble, just so y'all know.
One of the reasons that Growth Chamber fits so well in this deck is that ability. I can hold up a counter spell, hold up interaction, and then when Todd doesn't do anything into it, use my mana while wasting his.
Oh, yeah. I'm under no implication that this is anything remotely than a really horrible matchup for me. So the fact that I won game 1 made me pretty happy, but I don't think I'm going to come close to winning game 2 or 3.
Okay, attack for 4.
12.
12. Ultimate this Dovin.
Yep. I guess I'll Chemister in response and try to bait out a Spell Pierce or whatever, but I assume that that's not going to happen.
No, Chemisters is fine.
Yeah, you should almost never counter Chemister's Insight against this deck. Unless it's with exactly Syncopate, and you probably still need to have mana untapped otherwise.
This is my turn 5. Yeah. This is once again not a particularly good Dovin. I want these 2. I think I just want this as another piece of interaction.
This is one of those where it doesn't really matter because your hand is such a perfect wall of disruption that I'm just going to lose anyway.
Pass the turn.
All right. Go.
End of turn, deploy.
In response, Growth Spiral.
Yep.
Play my land and Frilled Mystic it.
That's fine.
Your turn. Basically just trying to use my mana as much as possible and also make sure I can protect my life total a bit. I'm going to go to 8.
Play a Growth Chamber Guardian.
Sure.
Pass the turn.
Draw.
Chat's mentioning something about 7 versus 10. You looked at 10 cards, right? From Dovin?
Yeah,
I looked at 10.
That's what I thought.
Took
Chat,
three of 10 and then put 7 on the bottom.
Maybe I only looked at 7. I don't know.
I don't know.
Who cares? It's over.
He had 3 kind of pulled off to the side for a while because those are the ones he was thinking of taking. I don't know if that changes any of your thoughts on anything.
Yeah, I think I only looked at 7, but meh.
All right,
he found
let's
3
make
ones that
5,
he
5
was
and draw
okay
2
with.
cards and gain 2 life. So I'm going to go to 10.
That's fine.
And it resolves?
Yep.
All right, I have 7 cards. Your turn.
Adapt to this Growth Chamber Guardian.
Mm-hmm. I have a feeling Ross about to clown me in some way. Unless his hand is just all negates. Could just be a hand of all negates. That'd be kind of tight.
10 right now.
Mm-hmm.
Deputy of Detention, the Crisis. Attack for 8.
Okay, I'm at 2.
Pass the turn.
Play a biogenic ooze.
You're 2, and you've played your land.
Yes. You win.
Counter it. Yeah.
I needed to draw a Frilled Mystic because I had a Wilderness Reclamation and some cool stuff to do.
My hand actually wasn't that great. I just had the one Frilled Mystic and like some sorcery speed answers.
I mean, the threats is what did it, right?
Yeah.
And then the Deputy Detention basically blanking the entire turn I spent to cast the Crisis. I only drew 2 cards and gained 2 life versus a bunch of 4/4s.
Yeah.
My Frilled Mystics don't really match up in a lot of spots, which is why I actually was considering siding them out. But Ross was there just hitting me with like chunks for 4, so I don't think Root Snare would have been particularly good.
Yeah,
I mean, it would have just saved me a turn. I don't know. All right, game 3. Any questions while we're waiting?
We got some good ones. Where do you think the biggest tools for innovation remain in the standard format? Any unexplored decks / cards that jump to mind?
I think we've explored a lot of the Aristocrat style decks with Judith, but we just couldn't really figure out one that worked. I think that the card is extremely powerful and it just needs a little bit of help. And on top of that, Rakdos in general as a color combination doesn't feel like we've really put a lot of work into it. Like Rakdos Firewheeler seems like a really nutty type of a card that just doesn't have a home and hasn't seen any play. I think Grixis, like dragon style deck, like Nicol Bolas, things like that, feels like they should see more play and just don't.
Yeah, I think more like there was this Dimir mid-range deck floating around online in the last week or two to really taking advantage of Hostage Taker, Thief of Sanity, and Thought Erasure. I think there's more to be done there. Maybe you go red and get some red removal and Nicol Bolas by adding a color. I think Heroic Reinforcements plus Hero of Precinct 1. We saw it in some of the Mardu decks, but I think like a Naya deck utilizing that or just rebuilding that Mardu deck, that combination seems really potent to me. So there's a couple things, but I think it's a lot of things that we explored before and they didn't work out then and people shelved, that maybe if you put the more work into them now that the metagame's more defined, could end up being better. So you know what kind of interactive spells you want. I think like especially in Mardu with Hero Precinct 1, I think Carnival Carnage right now is really good.
Yeah.
It's very good against the white decks, against the blue decks. The back hack gives you a mana sink and it's a cheap multicolor card for Hero. So that's a card that wasn't in the original list because it's just like not that powerful, wasn't that good against Sultai, but is better now that the metagame has shifted. So I think we want to revisit decks that didn't do that well in week 1 now that there's a better target and better target for you to build towards.
Sure.
Ugh. Go.
Yes, no Spell Pierce. My hand again doesn't function without it, but this time Ross just didn't get the Spell Pierce.
Okay, that was a good draw. Pass the turn.
Trigger. Graveyard. Go.
Check for 2.
18.
Deputy of Detention, trigger Hero.
Fudge.
Pass the turn.
Doop. Hey. That's still not even
What card are you going to cast?
I don't know. I don't have Wilderness Reclamation. I just have to check Hero. Gain a life.
You're 19?
Yep. Here you go.
Ooh.
Gonna have high, high hopes for a living. Got that song stuck in my head for like 3 days straight.
Pass the turn.
All right, Mr. Director.
Yes, sir.
Pretty sure that Ross doesn't have Disdainful Stroke and just has a bunch of negates. I'm gonna need some more ooze tokens.
Response.
Tap this.
Tap your Hydro Crisis.
Yeah, you get a Max Brown.
Yeah, I'll look. Hold on.
He might find it. He might find it. I have one ooze token. I just need a couple more, and then they're gonna get.
I didn't find it.
Yeah. All right. So these are gonna have some counters on it, and then good luck, I guess. Hope you have a Dovin. If you do have Dovin though, it could be problematic because of the Sagittarius volley.
That was
Just
a good draw.
couple. It should, not. This was plenty.
That was a good draw.
Swag on them with some otters. All right. You Conclave Tribunaling?
Yeah, that I am.
Okay.
Pass the turn. This is still going to be a problematic game. That 1/3/3 Ooze token is.
Let's try another one.
Oh, jeez.
Is that good? Does it work? Is it resolving? Sounds like it's resolving to me. Attack for 3. And then
17.
Boink and boink. Your turn. Maybe I should. Oh no, this is not tapped anymore. I'm gonna attack for 2 more.
15.
All right, so you're 15.
Little late on this one, Dak.
Ooh,
Oh no!
Little
that
late.
hurts.
Merlurf turtle.
Growth Chamber Guardian.
Yeah, sure, dude.
Pass.
Just remember, it took a takesies backsies to get here.
Look, it didn't take a takesies backs. It took a whole reset of a game. I'm pretty sure I'm fine with this. Okay, attack, sure. Resolves damage.
You go to 15.
Kill all those doofers.
I got you at 13 because he added that.
Yeah, 13. You're right.
Biogenic ooze.
God.
Sure.
Hidden ooze. In a turret, they all get 2 counters. That's pretty sweet. 2, 2, 2, and 2. Boom! Nice negates, doofus. So, and that is the strength. No, show them your hand, okay? Make sure that they know at home. Ross's hand contained 2 copies of negate. The Frilled Mystic, you missed on green mana. Welcome to the club, not finding our 3rd color in a game. That happened with me and Esper.
This was my hand.
Yeah, so Biogenic Goose, creature-based sideboard plans quite good when your opponent has a bunch of negates, spell pierces. Even Carnage Tyrant there would not have been remotely as good as Biogenic Ooze because it doesn't go wide enough to contain your Hero Precinct 1 and things like that. So,
yeah, Biogenic Ooze in that deck sideboard is a really good idea. Dodges negate, dodges removal. If it sticks around, it's great with Reclamation. You
Right.
just have all this extra mana. It's a great Simc. Takes over the game really quickly. Ever like the first removal spell they bring out is the Sweeper because it's the most awkward one. That's the right one.
it's good.
Yeah,
And it looked good, too.
that's just good deck building.
Yeah. All right. Let's take a few questions. We're actually almost timed out for the day. We can answer like 1 or 2, but try to keep them. We'll try to keep the answers short-ish.
Well, here's a short one and kind of lead into Thursday.
Sure.
What cards do you really see impacting Modern other than Light Up the Stage / Skewer the Critics?
From the new set specifically.
Yes.
Cinder Vines is a possibility.
I do like me some Cinder Vines. It feels very Eidolon the Great Revel-esque, but also just has upside of being able to destroy an artifact or enchantment. So
Yeah. Not really coming up with something else, but we'll figure it out. We're doing Modern on Thursday. That's what's our lead in there, and we're going to be going over Jeffrey Carr's 16-0 Mono Red Phoenix deck from the Team Open in Indianapolis, running that through a nice little Modern gauntlet. So be sure to tune in for that 2 days from now. Same. What do you keep saying? Same bat time, same bat place,
same bat channel.
same bat channel. Okay.
That's what Adam West used to say on old Batman's.
Okay. Sure.
Are you serious? Okay. Anyway, so yeah, we are going to be doing that. As far as, I think Live the Stage and Skewer the Critics are like pretty obvious why they should be in Modern decks because
Terramander.
yes,
Goes in the best
Terramander
deck.
already seeing some play. Basically, things that have cost reduction, I think, are generally going to be better in older formats. And I think you can see cards like Live the Stage, Skewer the Critics, and Terramander all have that kind of decrease how expensive they are to meet their full potential. And I think that's really important when it comes to Modern. The power level is super high, so you need your cards not only to be versatile but also to be cheap.
So that's a few. There's usually not a ton of new cards that impact it, but this impacts something pretty big. Burn is super popular now. Mono-Red Phoenix is good. Is it Phoenix gets a bit of an upgrade? So we'll see what the other decks can do to handle it. But that's what we've seen a lot of in the early days of this format. Dredge to combat Burn. A little bit of Ad Nauseam actually coming up recently because it's good against Is it Phoenix, Burn, and Dredge. Yeah. 3 of the most popular decks, along with Grixis Shadow. So we'll definitely bring you a nice little slate of decks, and you'll get to see us answer that question live in person right here.
All right, one more.
Yeah, let's go with mono blue and all that being popular. What do you what decks do you think will be better to jump those decks? What would you play to combat mono blue and such?
If you want to beat mono blue, I would play mono white. I think that's the deck's worst matchup. Is also quite good against mono blue, but I don't think that deck is as good against the other decks in the format.
I disagree. I think the right build of Is the best deck in the format, personally. I think that John Job, his version was definitely interesting. Like, he was able to transition to the control role quite well against them, and cards like Terramander and Crackling Drake allow him to have like some early pressure against control, where his late game cards like Niv Mizzet and Hydroid Krasis are quite good against the reactive cards that a lot of decks use to punish things like Enigma Drake. So I'm not sure if his build is particularly correct. I don't feel like Dive Down belongs in the deck because you don't have Enigma Drake, and that 1-2 punch on turn 4 was one of the best draws that the deck could produce. But obviously, Dive Down very good at protecting Niv Mizzet from those spot removal spells. So it's a little bit of give and take, but I think that your deck just has so much velocity that you just play a Niv Mizzet and hope you get to untap with it. And if you do, the game's over. And if you don't, then so be it. Untap, cast Hydroid Krasis, kill some creatures, whatever.
Okay. Well, difference of opinion there, but those are definitely the 2 decks that I would move to if you specifically want to beat mono blue. They're definitely good there. So we'll probably see both of them pick up, I would imagine. We might see a downtick in the Nexus decks because mono blue certainly preys on them. And that'll open up the format to more mid-range decks, because where the deck like Jody Keith played, that Rakdos mid-range deck is very weak to Nexus, but it's pretty good at beating up the fair decks in the format. I think there's a lot of decks that in that space, not necessarily those colors, but a lot of mid-range decks that work like that. And Sultai rose to the top not only due to the power of Hydroid Krasis, but due to the fact that it got to play the highest volume of cards to beat up on Nexus decks post-board. They have duresses and counterspells. And maybe you see a different kind of Dimir shell, so it still gets those and gets to take advantage of the Dimir cards, maybe whether it's Grixis or Esper. So a lot of options left in that space, and if mono blue puts down the decks that are holding them down, then that's going to open up standard a lot.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's going to conclude Versus Live for today. We appreciate y'all hanging around, watching us, and checking out these new builds of standard decks from all the top performing decks from last weekend's Open and SCG Dallas. Out of these 6, what was your favorite, and what would you play in like an upcoming standard tournament if you had one this weekend?
If I had to play this weekend, I would just play mono blue again deck, but that's because it's a deck I like and I'm starting to learn it more. Like, it's a deck that it's kind of underpowered, so when you make mistakes, you get punished a lot. Mm-hmm. But if you play it really well, it is a deck that has game against every single deck in the format and is surprisingly good for the cards that it registers. So I'm in for mono blue as of now, but things might change come Memphis this weekend.
Yeah, I'm honestly, I was more impressed by a card more than a deck. And maybe this is a recency bias, but Biogenic Ooze felt pretty good to the extent that I am very curious why more people aren't playing it. And I know that there was the finals Sultai list from the Team Open in Baltimore, Indianapolis. Actually, no, it was Baltimore was the Team Open.
No, you're right.
Yeah. See. Biogenic Ooze, I think they had one or a few in their
sideboard.
And it came into play in one of the matches, and it looked phenomenal. And I don't know if it necessarily belongs in that shell because the deck has enough grindy elements or whatever, and it's such a uniquely powerful card in what it does, just providing you with an army in a can, as well as just once it's left unchecked, it's able to just go bananas with activated ability. To me, it makes me wonder why it hasn't seen more play.
Yeah, we saw a little bit of it in week 1, but it died out. It didn't really find a home.
Yep. Maybe that's it.
And the decks that it's really good in are decks that I think are weak to Nexus. So that's the card that could rise up if we see mid-range decks in that space where they're forfeiting the Nexus matchup for the most part, but are good against the rest of the field, and they're well positioned as a result. Biogenic Ooze could be a big part of that.
Yep. Alrighty. Well, that's going to conclude today's Versus Live. Appreciate y'all watching. We'll be here Thursday at 1 p.m., same time, same channel. I didn't say bat that time. But we're going to be running Mono Red Phoenix through the gauntlet. Jeffrey Carr went 16-0 in the team open, and his team lost in the finals. But he won his match against Ryan Overturf, which I brought up multiple times on the broadcast this past weekend. But I think it's important to note that he actually has an article up on StarCityGames.com right now, and you can go check that out. He goes through all sorts of stuff. I didn't have a chance to read it because we started this right after the article went live. So, but go check that out if you're interested in the Mono Red Phoenix deck. We're going to be running it through the gauntlet to see if it's as good as I think it is. I don't know if how good you think it is.
I don't know how good it is, but I think it could be really good.
I'm high on it. It's been around for a while. Jeffrey Carr has been piloting it for a while. Has 2 finals appearances with it, one of which he won his match. So that's pretty.
He lost
the other one. What's the other one?
Man, guy he played against must have been real good.
Yeah, that guy's
real handsome.
Yeah. Anywho, that's going to do it for today. Thanks for watching. We'll see you on Thursday.